It wasn't a little girl.
I was camping with my husband and his family at a small remote lake in New Mexico. There were about 10 people in our group and another group of 6 people in the next campsite. It was nighttime and both groups were doing typical activities, making s'mores, having a few drinks and telling stories, when we all heard what sounded like a little girl yelling out for help. Neither group had children with them, but we were all positive we were hearing a little girl and decided to search the area. There was a field behind our campsites, and we all saw a very tall, pure white figure standing maybe 100 feet away from us in the field, making the noises. We all agreed this thing looked maybe 6 feet tall, skinny, and white as can be. We made our way closer to investigate, but whatever it was that we saw started backing off as we got closer, and it disappeared into the trees. We returned to our campsite, and all night we continued to hear a little girl calling for help as we tried to sleep. The unrest stop. I was driving across country with my mom and sister when I was 16 and my sister was 20. It was late, but we were all well rested and alert. We were driving along an interstate and needed gas and a bathroom break, so we stopped at the only rest stop in 200 miles. There was a van full of teenagers on a road trip at the gas station, as well as a small gray car parked at the pump in front of us, with 2 young men standing still outside of it. When we got there, everything felt wrong. We'd been on the road for days and seen many rest stops at night and had never been afraid until then. My mom and sister went inside and I stayed in the car. I heard a teenager say they were creeped out and couldn't get the pump to work, and they left in a hurry. I was watching the car in front of us, and the 2 men had not moved at all. Not an inch. They weren't talking, they weren't any phones. They were just standing there, still as a rock. My sister and mom came running back out to the car, and when they got in, the 2 men slowly turned to look at us, while not moving or pivoting the rest of their bodies. And I swear, we all saw the same thing. They had eyes dark as pitch black and empty, truly empty, not reflecting any light at all, just a void. We sped out of there and didn't stop until we were in the next city. The worst thing about the entire experience, we couldn't find the place on any map. We knew exactly which spot on the interstate to look, and we couldn't find it on Google Maps or any paper map we had. We even asked locals about the creepy gas station out on a stretch of road and only got confused looks. We traveled on that interstate since, and there's no rest stop.
It was good to see an old friend.
When I was 37, I went to my high school reunion. I flew into the nearest airport and rented a car. The distance was about 35 miles through a very rural and almost abandoned part of the country. About 3 miles outside of town, I see someone on the side of the road, flagging me down. It turned out that it was one of the guys I had attended school with. He gets in the car and we start talking. Jim. I had not seen him in 20 years, but he still looked the same. Maybe a little older, but pretty much the same. So anyway, we get to town and I ask him if he wants to come to the event and have a few drinks. He says, "Nah, just take me home." I thought, okay, no problem. Jim's parents had lived only a few blocks from my grandmother's house, and I turned in that direction, but he said to take him to the outskirts of town. There was a mobile home park out there, and I figured, that is where he lived. When we reached the end of the turnoff, he said, "Just drop me here. Hey man, it was good to see you again." And he walks off into the night. So I go to the high school reunion, met some of my old classmates. We start to talk and, catch up. And as we were talking about who's coming to the reunion, I mentioned that I had just picked up Jim about 3 miles east of town and had dropped him off. Everyone gets quiet. Even the guy singing karaoke stops and lays down the mic. My cousin's face turns white as snow. "Hey, Jim died on that curve 8 years ago, man. It was a very violent accident. His car rolled and he was pretty much crushed to death. And we all attended his funeral." I started to feel real dizzy, and I ran out to the car to take some deep breaths. There, on the seat, is a local newspaper, printed 8 years previous, containing Jim's obituary. I still have the paper.
Death came for him.
I was standing in my parents' room talking to my very sick dad at the time. He was dying of stage 4 esophageal cancer. I got the weird feeling that something was behind me. I looked towards the doorway to the living room, and something about 4'6" in height and fully black is peeking around the corner with its hands on the doorframe. So, frightened but curious, I ran towards it. When I got outside the doorway, there was nothing. My dad was completely confused when I stepped back inside the room when I tell him, people who stayed at my house in my dad's final days claimed to have seen it. My mom saw the figure on multiple occasions, in multiple places, until he passed away. We haven't seen it since.
If you enjoyed the story,